All right, welcome back. So we've reached our final discussion here today, and so excited to have Brett's story here. But let me just do a quick recap. We've talked about meaningful connections, value creation with sales, helping portfolio companies and things like that when you're at that stage. But just a good, presentation for all of us to think about. Then we learned about covered the building blocks and fund formation life cycle. Then we learned a lot about the back end of running a fund, how to do a private investment offering, and how to market the right way. And now we're going to get into how to unleash your fund's potential while ensuring compliance with all the SEC broker-dealer regulations. So pleased to introduce Brett Story. He's the co-founder of Britehorn Partners. It's a full-service investment banking practice. But Britehorn Partners also owns Britehorn Securities. It's a FINRA SEC registered broker-dealer, and it specializes in managing compliance needs for investment bankers, institutional placement agents, and private capital funds. So, Brett, take it away. Thank you. Let's welcome Brett.
Thanks, Trevor. Thanks, Stan. Thanks, the Doida Crow team. Really happy to be here. This is not going to take 45 minutes, so happy hour is going to come early. Just really appreciate the opportunity and would echo the sentiments of the gentleman before. If you're going down this fun route, make sure you're surrounding yourself with the type of counsel and advice that can prevent small fires from becoming big fires, et cetera. I want to talk to you about a very specific niche of compliance as it pertains to funds, but first just a little bit about us. As Trevor mentioned, we own a broker-dealer in conjunction with our investment bank, where we're doing primarily mergers and acquisitions and capital raising for private companies. But one of the things that's triggered when you do that and get paid for it is obligation to register with FINRA and the SEC. So in 2017, we realized there was a market niche, and we bought what is now known as Britehorn Securities. And the best way to describe it is we provide regulatory as a service, similar but not necessarily overlapping with the two gentlemen before. For folks that are doing mergers and acquisitions, we had a client that was in the room earlier. For folks that are raising capital for private funds or private companies, also have another client in the room, or in-house at funds. And so really where this obligation triggers is when you're paying salespeople to raise capital for a fund. I started my career as a M&A and securities lawyer before forming Britehorn 10 years ago, and we've been at this and have about 40 reps that are on our broker-dealer platform, and we supervise or pass through roughly $20 million in commissions a year that those folks are making. So this is a very specific instance in a fund, and I want to start by saying that not all cases when you're raising funds for a fund do you need to have a broker-dealer involved. This is a very specific instance when you are paying a sales commission to somebody who is soliciting an investor. So for example, you have a fund, you have a salesperson that goes and raises $50 million with a pension fund or an institutional investor, and if you're incentivizing that salesperson with a commission on those dollars, whether at the time of the investment or over the life cycle of the fund, that triggers an obligation to register with FINRA and the SEC. And so there's a couple ways you can handle this. Much like Adam and Aaron talked about, you can in-house this function. You can buy a broker-dealer, you can hire chief compliance officer, and you can manage this in-house, or you can outsource it to a group like us. So the best way to think about it is sort of regulatory as a service. Jay talked at the beginning about the importance of people. Others, Adam and Aaron, touched on how important it is to build a team. Stan and Trevor talked about the various obligations that trigger around private capital and Reg D. All of that to say is, raising funds is the lifeblood of any fund. Obviously, you've got to execute a strategy, but to get there, you've got to get capital through the door. And what we've seen with the 5 or 6 funds that we've worked with over the years is that the best ones really prioritize those people that can raise capital, and those people have unique and important relationships. Not anybody can knock on the door and get in front of CalPERS, the California pension, or the Ontario teachers pension. fund. And so the folks that can want to be incentivized with upside. Sometimes that's in the form of carried interest, and that can be compelling, but very often it's in the form of commissions tied to the dollars they bring through the door. So paying somebody a commission on dollars that come through the door and not having them registered with a broker-dealer leads to a whole slew of potential issues. Again, to kind of piggyback on some of the war stories that Adam and Aaron mentioned, you've got regulatory enforcement, which for a new fund is a death sentence. You've got investor rescission rights. If you pay a commission to somebody who raises funds and that comes out down the road that you weren't doing that through a broker-dealer, investors can have rescission rights, and you can have the whole fund be unwound. Damaged reputation, which ties a bit to number one, legal liability and investor lawsuits, and voided contracts. So long way of saying, this type of arrangement, a FINRA and SEC licensed broker-dealer doesn't always trigger, but if you are planning on paying people a commission for bringing dollars in, it's important to do it the right way. There's a little bit of overlap with some of the subjects that have been covered, but the big thing here is peace of mind, and it's allowing you to do what you do best, which is raising money and executing on your strategy. So, I think about Trevor's Venn diagram of the different securities acts. There's a similar Venn diagram as it pertains to FINRA and SEC regulations around a broker-dealer, and having someone that can keep up with that stuff. When you have a broker-dealer involved, for example, we're the ones that are processing AML and KYC, suitability, making sure that those types of people don't end up in the fund that result in massive issues or the $400,000 mistake that was mentioned before, if not worse. And so, for example, Trevor talked about side letters and certain investors being treated differently than other investors, and that's been very much par for the course, certainly depending on the size of the check. Well, the SEC just came out with a new marketing rule that's tweaked that a bit, and so that's the kind of stuff that it's not widely published. You don't always know about it, but affiliating with a broker-dealer, if that's a route you choose to go, will help some of that. Certainly, working with talented securities counsel is probably the first step you take. There's different types of arrangements depending on who you're raising capital for. For example, if you're planning on raising from pension funds in certain states, you have to register as a lobbyist. Wouldn't even think that would necessarily come into play. It's not really lobbying, but in California it is, and California's got sharp claws, so to speak. So those are the kind of things that you wouldn't necessarily come across unless you were working with some expertise. So, quick case study, Vita Capital Management. Vita was a client of ours for 8 years. They were a private alternatives investment fund. They did investments in what are called life settlements. These are essentially, without getting too specific, buying out whole life insurance policies for pennies on the dollar. A very successful sort of alternative strategy. We started working with Vita when they were sub 500 million. They initially had only a couple people registered as salespeople, and these people were targeting different channels. Institutions, RIAs, which is almost like a wholesale, wealth management, financial advisors, et cetera. At one point, they got up to 11 reps. They were running $1.5 million of commissions through our doors every quarter. Those were commission dollars that were being paid out to these salespeople. And when they left us, they ended up at $3.7 billion of AUM, and they made a decision, which is kind of interesting to watch for the whole life cycle. A new fund may not hire salespeople and pay them commissions. When a fund gets to a certain size, though, that's a really good strategy. Then they got big enough where they were only taking investments from recurring existing investors, so there really wasn't that need to go out and solicit more investment. But there were a couple of their salespeople that stuck with Vita, and these individuals were raising tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars because of Vita's incentive structure and because of the comp structure, because they were making, seven figures. And so it's one strategy. It's not for every fund. I think it probably triggers for funds at a certain size. But if it is certainly a way to supercharge your AUM by hiring salespeople that can open those doors with institutional investors and compensating them in a way that keeps them sticking around. Any questions? 50 to 150 bips. Yeah, Stan asked, what's a typical sales commission? And my answer was between 0.5% and 1.5%. So, someone brings $100 million into a fund, they'll make, between 500K and $1.5 million. And a lot of times that's paid out over subsequent quarters to sort of mirror the life of the fund, or to build in some redundancy in an open-ended fund to make sure that the investors don't walk and someone's gotten a commission. But it's a nice annuity stream for those really talented salespeople that have the ability to raise those kind of dollars. Yeah, for an oil and gas SPV, this is not really a thing. If you've got, like the guys at Structure, if you've got a built-in channel of wealth management and trust clients that can populate your fund, then that's the answer. But if you're a newer fund that's especially hitting institutional investors, I'd say over $100 million, those funds that really want to get to the billion mark, that's typically who we've worked with, and they've made a lot of hay by hiring folks that can bang on doors and bring in dollars.
Things like that.
Yeah, that's Trevor asked sort of what the timeline is. That's the $1 million question, is finding the right people. So what we've seen with funds is sometimes there's a lot of really talented investment bankers across the country who specialize in institutional placement services, and they'll work for multiple funds at once, take a commission on raising them capital. So that's one route, is find a group that's got a track record and a reputation for raising capital. But if you decide to in-house it and bring your own salespeople in that are going to exclusively sell your fund, there's FINRA tests to take. Short end, 2 or 3 months. Long end, if you've got a day job and a family, maybe it takes a year to get somebody licensed who's never been licensed before. Once that happens, it's very seamless and quick to get them on a broker-dealer platform, and then there's some continuing ed and stuff like that, and like in any regulated world. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, thanks, Brett. All right, so we're almost there, right? We're almost to the happy hour everybody's waiting for. Let's see. All right, so before we go, I wanted to just open up one more time for questions for anybody. I mean, we had questions there. I know for Brett, for me, Stan, Adam and Aaron are still here. I think Jay's gone, but anybody have any other questions? All right, well, sincere thank you all for coming today. It's been ever since COVID, you never know if you're going to get people in a room, right? And so it feels nice to actually, I'm wearing a suit. I don't do this anymore. I feel like an actual lawyer, So it's nice. It's nice to shake some hands, actually see people, and really appreciate everybody coming out here. Enormous thank you to all the presenters today. We really appreciate you coming out and doing that, giving your time. That was, just thank you for doing that and being here. And then enormous thank you also to Jenny. Where's Jenny? Jenny, who put this all together. She's still putting stuff together. Anyways, did she come in now?
She's logging in right now.
Okay, everybody just erupt when she gets in here. Hey, Jenny! Yes. This wouldn't have happened without her. She put it all together. In fact, she even wrote this. She wrote what I'm saying right now. So thanks. I'm just kidding. But thanks everybody for coming. Let's go ahead. I think we can wrap this up, and we'll grab a drink and can hang out over here. We got the snacks and drinks in the other room. So we'll call it a wrap. Thanks, guys.